This is the Big Small Business Show. Welcome back. Now, let's look at the scenario. One ordinary morning, you wake up and this dream come true tender document sits in your inbox. And you look at it, and it's a bit out of your reach in terms of current personnel, resources, and cash flow, but you decide, whatever, you're going to take this risk. Now, joining me now in studio to unpack if you've just oversold your company in terms of deliverables is Val Nichas, founder of VBN Consultants. Some of her clients sport the likes of Design Partnership, the Doppio Zero Group, AgriNet, and the Intercare Healthcare Group. Welcome, Val.
Thank you, Alon.
So,
good to see you again.
Did I just oversell my business?
Well, the first thing that I thought of when you made that statement was, I wonder how many emails you had in your inbox not to have seen it earlier.
Yeah. So this scenario happens, and it's happened to me. I remember one of the in 8 years ago, we got an opportunity to. It wasn't a tender. It was we won a contract that was 36 times our annual turnover. One client.
That's brilliant.
Okay.
Lucky.
And we went through hell to try and make the decision, whether we should take it or not, and went through hell when we took the decision to take it. So how should I have been thinking about this?
Okay, well, if we look back at certain industries, and I think probably the advertising industry is a typical one where they're often tendering for work and they don't really have the resources, because you shouldn't really have resources hanging around. But the minute they win the account, they have to be resourced up immediately, in fact, roll out the first campaign. So I think it's not unknown in those kind of industries. But I think for smaller businesses where you probably don't have such a big infrastructure, I think it is a challenge. But I think business is business. So I think very few of us will say no unless we seriously can't do it, or if it's not on strategy with our business. So you probably did the right thing. Did it succeed?
It did.
Fantastic.
It did. But I didn't have grey hair before.
Oh, okay. So there were some consequences. Yeah, but I think that's why I think in business it's quite good to always have your resource pool, even if they're not employed in your company. I think to have good supplier relationships. And I remember a lovely project once. I was working with a leading QSR company, and we decided to show a prototype store in Sun City 3 weeks before a conference. But this was just a last-minute decision. Should we build the store and show it to franchise partners? And everyone thought, we're never going to pull this off. In 3 weeks, build a store. Yes, it didn't have to be operational, but it had to be the physical structure. And what made it work was we immediately put it into almost a project squad, so a squad team. And then we had very good suppliers. We had a brilliant shop fitter in that instance, who was a trusted advisor, got them around in a group, said, this is what we have to do, and they delivered. In 3 weeks, constructed a store in one of the conference areas of Sun City. So I think it is possible. I think if you have got an extended resource pool, and I think if you're quite a methodical sort of planner, but I think it is wrong also to take on stuff that might compromise quality. But I think business is business. And in fact, this morning I was talking to a business associate of mine, and he was saying, it's Africa, and he sort of quoted the Nike term of, if you're not fast, you're food. Yeah. And I thought it's just such a beautiful way to capture it.
Yeah.
So I think we all do. I mean, I do as well. I run a small consultancy, and we've got 3.5 people. But we'll try and take on everything without compromising quality. But we've learned a few tricks of the trade to try and manage that.
So let's look at the counter side, because I also see in the business that I'm in, I see many entrepreneurs who do bite off more than they can chew, and the consequences are very often devastating. So sometimes it's too big, sometimes it's the wrong type of work,
yes.
and both have devastating consequences. Is there some sort of framework? What I'm trying to get from you is a model or a way of thinking around when to make the call. I made the call to do it.
Yes.
But in different situations, I'm making a call not to do it. I don't know how I'm coming up with that answer.
Yes, and what do you find? Do you put it through a filter almost?
Filter, yeah.
Because I would imagine it comes back to having a very clear picture of what your company's vision is,
yes,
and what your strategic alliance is. So, what is it that we do here?
Yes.
And then try and pick those projects or jobs or businesses that aligned to the bigger picture. Because I think sometimes if we're too short-term thinking or too short-term thinkers, we're only doing it for the revenue. We all need revenue, so let's not ignore that. But I think if you're saying that this is going to build your company and complement where you're heading to, I think probably that's a good filter. And then is it your core competency? So is it something that you can do well? Because I think if it is the tender overnight, if it's not your core skill, I think you probably will struggle to deliver and probably overcommit. But if it's something you know how to do and know how to do it well, you probably can succeed. So I think it's having that end in mind.
Last question for me is around, you spoke about setting up a project team before, and project team for me is a beginning and an end, and then you've got labor in that equation. Do you take on, in terms of the mental model of a project, this is a project, and therefore your contracting is fixed term contracts in order to mitigate that risk? I mean, how do you handle the labor issue? Because you might, the project might end, and then you're stuck with like all these people who you can't afford.
Yes. So I think if it's a short-term project, then I think it's a bit risky to get permanent employers. So I think it's probably employees. It's probably nicer to outsource and rather use smaller shops that are specialists in their skill, because they're going to carry on working and they're taking you on as a project. But you have to have built that network. So I think you need to have a resource pool of people that you can rely on, and you book them in, when you'll say, look, can I buy some of your time 6 months only? And then you exit quite nicely, so you don't have that additional overhead. I think to employ permanent staff on a short-term contract, I think is probably more risky, especially if the business isn't rolling in.
Well, let me tell you how, before I close off, what I've learned. I've learned, number one, that your suppliers are very important in making that decision, and good suppliers are important for your growth and to absorb that capacity. And second, the fact that you have to be very much, when you're making a decision, to be, is it aligned or not aligned to your competency and to your vision?
Interesting what you're saying about aligning the business, but I must say one thing I've learned, without compromising quality, it's amazing how much more productive you can be when you know you've only got 3 hours to crack this idea or 3 days to come up with a project. I think we become a lot more productive, so I think it's not a bad thing.
Great point. Thanks, Val, for being on the show.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot. Cheers.